meeting to order. Chris, if you take roll call, please.
Matt Padula.
Here.
Brenda DePrado.
Here.
Sierra Extra.
Here.
Suzanne Schwartz.
Here.
Will Wade.
Here.
Tiffany Vincent. Present. You have a quorum of 5.
Okay, number 2, public comment on the closed. Joe, our one member. Oh, no, who's back
Someone's behind the podium. Oh, I was like, have you met Ashley, our fiscal director?
Okay, so we're going to adjourn or reconvene in open session. It's 5:30, everybody. So 4.1 is the Pledge of Allegiance. And Gabe, I've never picked on you. Why don't you lead us off on the pledge, please? Okay, 4.2, announcement of any reportable action taken in closed session. We took no reportable action. Okay, board action item 4.3, approval of agenda. Looking for a motion and a second.
Can I make a motion on the agenda? Last board meeting, we talked about putting it on the agenda to decide our way ahead for the venue of the board meetings, i.e., do we want to stay in the library or stay in tech? Is that something that we can add to the agenda? And do I need to propose it's just a motion to add that to the agenda, is that accurate?
Right, we'll add that if it's okay with the board, and we'll put it as 12.2. How's that?
So I'd like to make a motion to add that to the agenda to decide where permanent location for the board meetings will be as item 12.2 on the agenda.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That passes, and then let's do a motion with that added on. I think we still need a motion to accept approval of the agenda itself, and I'll move for approval.
With the added,
Exactly.
okay,
Yes, sir.
I second.
I have a question, sorry. Isn't 4.5
Pardon me?
the orientation of meeting space?
I think you're on the wrong one. Maybe, Brenda?
Maybe.
Can you go to the top and make sure you're on
Stand by.
the 17? Mine popped up as last meeting, too.
You are correct, never mind. Disregard.
Okay, so do we have a second?
I second.
Okay.
Second. So approval of the agenda, all in favor?
Aye.
With the addition, all opposed, motion passes. Number 5, public comment on items not on the agenda, and I see we have none, correct?
Correct.
Okay, moving on then to 6, consent calendar is an action item. Anyone on the board like to talk about anything on the consent calendar? Now, I need to do this, correct?
After the vote.
Yeah, after the vote. Okay, seeing no comment on the consent calendar, do I have a motion and a second to accept?
I'll make a motion for the approval of the contracts.
I'll second.
And just to confirm, well, I guess the consent calendar is only contract, so,
Yeah.
okay, disregard.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we'll do this after I read this, right? Okay. Mark, I see you have a public comment. I'm going to read this and then call you up to the podium. This item relates to the motion to approve a First Amendment to Superintendent Tiffany Benson's employment agreement with the governing board. Prior to taking final action, Government Code Section 54953 requires an oral summary of the recommendations for approval on the salary schedule, or compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits of a local agency executive during open session of a regular meeting in which the final action is to be taken. Accordingly, the following is an oral summary of the financial terms in the First Amendment. As amended, duration of the agreement will be for 4 years, beginning on July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2029. To account for a required cap on contributions to the employer-sponsored retirement plan for the 2024-2025 school year, the superintendent shall receive a one-time payment of $6,000, less applicable deductions payable in August 2025 beginning July 1st, 2025. The superintendent shall annually receive $6,000 for deposit into a tax-sheltered annuity account. As amended, compensation of the $3,000 for earnings a master's degree has been omitted from the agreement. Effective July 1st, 2025, the superintendent's annual base salary will be $255,000. With that said, public comment, Mark Nowak.
I'm going to be a tiny bit off topic, but it's something important that needs to be said. I'd like to make a few comments about Pam and Gabe first. The floating of the bond was revealing. The district is in very good financial shape. Before them, it was not. I don't know if one or both initiated the process of paying off debt, but the outcome has been extremely beneficial to the district. And LA Unified is attempting to float a bond, and they are expecting 6.1%. So, congratulations to Gabe, congratulations to Pam. That can't be overlooked. Now, regarding Tiffany, I understand that you're adjusting your salary. I believe it is well-deserved. And what I find very unique here is we have someone who has just been themselves the whole time. Nobody different. She embraced her important role in the passing of the bond. Painfully, she executed the budget cuts that have returned the district to stability. And she is beginning a lasting change in culture within this district. She was unafraid to embrace our most difficult problem last year, which was the kindergarten at center. I want you to know that her first attempt to go there, the students coincidentally were absent, and she returned. And that is her just being herself. She cares, she wants to understand. Anyway, we had decades of superintendents who would have decided that they had something more important to do and would have assigned anybody else to that, and that just can't be overlooked. So I'm looking forward to many more years. I think your contribution has been tremendous already, and I wish you the best of luck, although I don't think you need it. Just continue to be yourself.
Thank you, Mark. No further public comments?
Can I get a clarification on that?
Sure.
Mark, can you confirm, was that as an individual, or is that the president of the tutor that you made those comments?
Well, oftentimes I portray it.
I'm curious to know, and I'm not trying to nitpick here, I just want to know, does the union echo your comments, or is that your comments alone?
So there are always some people that are bitter, and I'll say some of my colleagues in the math department are upset with you because they want to talk to you. Some people in English are upset because they want to talk to you. And I'm sure that you'll find time to talk to them. But around the district, we see a culture change. We see someone who is willing to step into the fire, and the fire doesn't get ugly. It doesn't turn into fireworks. And we know that we have someone who cares at the top, and that is also my view, because that's been my experience. And as a president, I'm not going to say Pam was my antagonist, maybe I was hers. And Pam was, nice to me. She treated us pretty well. But I don't find the same approachability. And my experience, although it's not really greater than I have more experience than the classroom teacher. But classroom teachers are, did you ever hear any problems from Golden West this year? No, because someone is listening at the top, and that's what teachers want. They want someone to listen, they want someone who's positive, someone who's inclusive, someone who's thinking about everybody, and that's what she does. That's who she is.
Okay.
And you can't fake who you are. She's not in it for the money, really. She has purpose. Nobody knew this district better in interviews than her. Nobody should have. But she knows the intricate details, and she knows what she needs to do. So yeah, a lot of this is my comments, but keep in mind that I hold a meeting with Executive Board every month, and I hold a meeting with Rep Council every month, and people, there is no negative. There is no negative. We'd like more of the positive, and, yeah.
Great.
Those are our comments.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, number 7, approval of First Amendment to the superintendent's employment agreement. I'm going to go ahead and speak on this. So if we rewind a year ago, and, well, I think we're the only two left standing that were involved in that big process, but we had help from the previous board. We had like 20-some candidates. We had one that was out of the country, remember? So it was a long process. It was expensive, but it had to be done. We settled on Tiffany Benson, who was already employed here. Caught a little bit, oh, you spent all that money and you just hired within. So I cut a little flack on that, but I was one of the ones right up at the front, and we wanted to hire her, and we were able to. So as a board president, I was responsible to get with legal counsel and do her contract representing the board, and then we brought it to the whole board. The board said, okay, and I got to tell you, I was a little like, the salary for the industry norm was low. I feel in my heart Tiffany Benson didn't take it because she wanted to get a foot in the door and be a superintendent. I think she took that low salary we offered her last year because from her heart she wanted to not just be the superintendent, but be that superintendent. I think over the last year, I like what I've seen, what I've evaluated. And I also want to say this too. When Tiffany Benson took that salary, you have the superintendent and you have the assistant soups. Within the county of Solano, she had the lowest salary, so connected to with the assistant soups following. So this kind of opens it up where it should be. So that's a background. Now, if I take a right hand down this road, what I want to say is anybody, in my opinion, this is my one board opinion, anybody out there that hasn't seen a culture change and a change in transparency and the way we do our daily business and the way people that work directly for the superintendent, which works for all of us, a school district, every parent, is modeling after, I think it is getting some a bad message to them. I'm impressed. I think we've come a long way in a year. I know we've got more to do. I think, Superintendent, why I'm in favor of this is I think that there's a million battles you could jump in and try to fix everything. I like your prioritized list. It's how you're walking up the ladder and addressing the issues. I've had more good emails and good texts and thank yous in the last 11 months that I did in my first 2 years. So, you know, I'm not out recruiting all these things. They're coming to me. So I'm impressed. I'm excited about the next year or two. I have no problem extending your contract 1 year. With the state of California, superintendent cannot be over 4 years. So I absolutely have no problem. But don't get me wrong, me and Tiffany have had those meetings. I think the board president meets the most with the superintendent, and I've sent her out a meeting shaking her head and stuff, but it's like she keeps the foot on the gas, and we correct things, and we correct things. So enough said there by me. I don't know if any other board member wants to chime in or not, but I'm excited about the next school year.
Can I say one thing? Oh, sorry,
yeah,
you want to
go
go
ahead.
first? We didn't settle on you.
Agreed.
We won you when you accepted the position.
You're good. Good clarification.
Yes. Not just as a board member, but as a parent, I have definitely seen the shift in the district. We came into this district 6 years ago, and the culture was definitely different. So as a parent, I thank you, but also as a board member, your hard work does not go unseen. You, like Matt said, you don't take your foot off the gas. There's so many things that's on your checklist, and you are just knocking them out one at a time. So not only as a board member, but as a parent, I really thank you for really turning this district around for the better.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll just back clean up here and echo everything that's been said. I will also highlight that, a process of going through selecting the superintendent, to Matt's point, I call due diligence, because the district deserves that, and we clearly got the best candidate out of that. I think it was 32 applicants that we had that were qualified. I won't share confidential information that was in the interviews, but I will remind the district, or I'll at least share a conversation with Tiffany, that during questions, one of the questions that I asked on the interview panel was actually about the looming dark cloud over the horizon, which was going to be forecasted budget cuts. And you did not stray. You attacked that question. I respect your position. And unfortunately, that came to fruition as a result of funding shortfalls. So I wanted to see grit, and you gave grit, and not only did you give grit in the interview, but you followed through. And that was a really hard decision, but I think it left the district in a much better place as a result. So again, I thank you. And then just to be very clear, this contract amendment is a performance-based feedback mechanism that we're providing. And to the rest of the board's points, we're very pleased with what you're bringing to the district, what you're doing. In some ways, these are small monetary amounts, but in reality, based on everything that's going on, they are significant from the board's perspective. But they are well-earned, well-deserved, and we appreciate your leadership. So thank you.
And for the public, correct me if I'm wrong, the superintendent's contract is up on the website and can be viewed by anyone at any time. Okay, with no further comments, I'm looking, this is an action item. I'm looking for a motion and a second, please.
I would happily motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Number 8, approval of amendments to employment agreements for the Chief Business Officer, Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services, and Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. This is an action item. Yeah, I'll give you the last say, right after the board. Anyone from the board have anything to say?
Can I clarify? Tiffany, was your comment based on the previous agenda item or this agenda item?
Kind of an overlap, but I can certainly wait until you guys speak.
Got it, sounds great.
You got anything?
Approach it is, do you want me to give a slight justification on why we did what we did?
Oh, you're welcome to, yeah.
Okay, I'll just give a slight justification of what we did. This was a question that came out of the last board member as we reviewed the contracts with our unions. We had been in discussions about our contract with the superintendent, and then there were 3 great individuals who happened to be sitting right over there that were left out of that discussion. So as a single board member, this is the board's attempt to demonstrate our commitment to you 3 and to thank you for your performance as well and for all the great work that you guys do. So, but that is in line with all of the other contracts that we've signed across the district recently, and we wanted to be consistent, so thank you, gentlemen.
So I think,
So,
Randy's got a question.
oh, I don't have a question, sorry. I just want to say, as we praise Tiffany, just like we praise you guys, thank you for everything, because you all explain things to me that I have no idea what I'm talking about. So I really appreciate all the numbers and the LCAP explanations and everything that you guys explained to me, because without you, I wouldn't understand probably half of this. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, you guys, just to bring this home in layman terms, right? I know you all have a job to do, and you have a boss, and the boss, like any boss anywhere, wants you to do this, this, and this, and you do it because you want to stay employed and on and on and on. I mean, at the end of the day, that's how it works everywhere, right? So with that said, I see the change. If this was, and I'm not talking bad about anybody in the past, if this was 2 years ago, I would say no. Honestly, I'm sorry, I'm just being truthful with you. But I think the leadership style here is that some of you, and I see it with Vince, because Nick's kind of new, like somebody took the handcuffs off Vince and said, hey, Vince, you're allowed to, go do your job, that's what we're paying you for. So I'm totally in favor, in layman terms, of this, because having this 2-year contract, because I don't want you to take an offer from somebody else and jump over there. I want to lock you in here for a couple of years. The only thing that bothers me, and not to get sidetracked, everybody, but sometimes I talk too much, and I'm going to address this in September and October, I think Allison Rude needs a seat at that table, because you've allowed her, and we talked a lot about all these inter-district transfers, which cost us a lot of money, and a whole new structure to her department, and I like what comes out of that office now. And I think her job is just as important as all three of you. So if I prevail, there'll be 4 of you there. But anyway, thank you. At the end of the day, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Tiffany, you get the last word.
I really appreciate all of the affirmation of the board and the support. And I just want to say, recognition of my work is recognition of their work. I can only do what my team makes happen and the teams behind them. So I want to just say I am so humbled by this positive affirmation, and I want to publicly thank my team who makes all of these things happen, from the small projects to the large projects. And so I really appreciate the board's support in, to use your words, locking in the team, because I do think we are poised to do some really momentous things in the district.
Okay, with nothing further, this is an action item.
Hopefully it passes after all that.
So I'm looking for a motion and a second.
I proudly motion to approve the contracts.
I'd like to be the guy that seconds it, and Gabe, knowing that I'm still going to bug him all the time, so I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, moving on to number 9, educational services. Nick, approval of 2025-26 local control accountability plan, known as the LCAP. This is an action item. I know the board members, for the public, we spent a lot of time on this issue and many others. Last week, a lot of follow-up information. I probably think the board's pretty much up to speed. If you want to say a few words, and then if the board has any last-minute questions, then we'll go ahead and take a vote on this.
Yeah, of course, happy to answer any questions. I do only want to report that we've received no formal questions from any educational partners that we would need to respond to this evening.
Go ahead.
Nick, we talked about it in our pre-brief, but if you just, and I know I'm putting the cart in front of the horse, correct me if I'm wrong, the local indicators inform the LCAP, correct?
They do, yeah.
Yep. And in our discussion, I just want to highlight it for the rest of the board and for the rest of the public as well. Unfortunately, it's hard to discern what was versus what is can you provide any significant changes in the LCAP from last year and/or the indicators that we'll be approving tonight? I.e., in our conversation, we talked about, the district putting in rudder changes to slowly turn the ship. What would you classify as potential rudder shifts in this LCAP and the local indicators this year?
So let me, may I hold the indicator question until that item?
Yes.
And also, not much is my answer to that one, because that's sort of a prescribed piece, and I'll kind of explain that. To the other question about changes, so I could go a lot of different directions with this, so I think I'll start with.
Just a summary of any big initiatives or any indicators from the, and I used that word, sorry, I'll change it. Any of the data tell you something that, as a district, we need to put in a rudder shift?
Thank you for, I see where you're going now, I appreciate that. So as we talked about last week, what our data is telling us is that we have the need to continue to and enhance focus on our instructional program, namely our first instructional program, or our core instructional program, as we call it. So, a lot of the pieces in Goal 1 are getting another look. They are continuing some of these activities, but we're approaching them maybe a little bit differently with some different training, working with our teachers to better understand the data points that we have so that they can, change instruction as needed in those spaces. That's not to say that we're getting rid of, obviously, our Tier 2 and Tier 3 supports for students, but we're really placing our emphasis on focusing there. When we have the number of students that we currently have that are not meeting what we think are our expectations, it really tells us that we need to look first, what's going on every day in our classrooms. Again, with regard to Goal 2, we continue to see more concerns around, bullying, harassment, suicidal ideation, chronic sadness that we need to continue supporting. We still have those resources in place, but we're also taking a little different look at some of those. For example, we've piloted and we'll be implementing a new SEL program next year at our secondary, in our secondary schools, and then doing that same process with pilot and then adoption for our our elementary schools.
Great, thank you for the recap.
Sure.
Nick, my only, I understand it, being the third year with the LCAP. I know the board will get kept up on speed of changes and things as we move forward. But my one thing that I'm really focusing on is I think we do between a good and a very good job at the kids and our students that are going on to college.
Okay.
Whether they're doing it academically, extracurricular, scholarships, whatever, I think we put it there. What I see going to the wayside, and I hope it's not, is we still have this big group that is going to go into trades, aren't going to go to college. We're never going to go to college. And quite frankly, the trade skills, you can make a very good living and stuff. So emphasis, please, on doing what we can. Let's bring in these teachers. Let's try to go back, like at the high school, maybe to 2016, 2017 mode, and see if we can restaff those. That's really my only comment. And then a part of the LCAP, you were talking about, like the wellness centers and things, correct? I just ask that you really keep an eye on this. There's surrounding school districts around us that have shut all those down, and they're doing fine. I just don't want to take anything from any student that needs it, but I don't want it there just so we can say it's there when we can put things to better use. So if you guys could kind of keep an eye on that and maybe, periodically update the board would be great.
Will do. And we're required to do an update in January for you, and we'll be sure to talk about those and other things. And we don't have to wait till then either to update you, so.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And with no other comments? Okay. This is an action item. Again, we spent a lot of time, and thank you for last week. I appreciate it. So I'm looking for a motion in a second, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2025-26 LCAP.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go on to number 2, local indicators. Nick?
Yes, and actually, Krista, do you have the clicker? Is it somewhere here? Let me see.
Next slide.
Okay, so tonight, we have a brief presentation for you on the local indicators, which is actually part of the California dashboard. And what the local indicators are is, as you know, California has a number of multiple measures for the dashboard, where it looks at any number of things, and there are really two types of indicators. First, there's the state level data, and this is data that's populated by the state. You know, we send all sorts of data to the state around enrollment, around results from assessments, suspensions, attendance, et cetera. The state then puts them into their system, and they're the ones who make what you're familiar with, those little dials that you see like this. However, there are a few things that are locally reported, and that's what tonight is. And we're required to do this on the same night that the LCAP is presented or approved, and the budget. You don't have to approve this. This is just a report. And so there are a number of different priorities that are addressed through the local indicators. Some of these priorities are also addressed in other measures, but these ones are the local indicator version of these. And really what you should know is the performance on the dashboard should be reflected in the LCAP. So I apologize in advance. Some of the things you see tonight will be a little bit repetitive from last week, but they're also part of what we need to be measuring. But the other part of this is that if we're effective in the LCAP, it'll impact our dashboard. So these two things are really mutually inclusive. So our first priority is one that we talked about last week, but I'll briefly touch on it again, and that is our basic services. I should back up. The requirement this evening for us is that we show this to you and we talk about the analysis. I know that seems like a low bar, and it could be if we treated it as such, but these are all data points that we look at as part of our planning processes. So we have 90.7% of our teachers are cleared, as was demonstrated last week. We are 100% compliant with instructional materials and facilities, and all of our EL teachers are meeting the requirements to teach our English learners. So we have met standards with regard to priority 1, basic services, which means we get that little box on our dashboard next year that says the standard has been met.
Hey, Nick, what's the 0? I can't read under
So
that.
I'm sorry, I just was realizing that I didn't make that big enough. It's what we call misassignments of teachers of English learners. That means
okay.
all of our teachers are qualified to teach those students in particular. Our priority 2 is our implementation of state academic standards. The way we measure this is we do a survey earlier in the year, and we actually ask teachers, how well equipped are you to, what's that? That one's easier. Oh, you can't see that one? I'm sorry. How well equipped they are or informed they are to implement the academic standards. So the goal here is that we're over 4. As you can see, we are over 4 in the top 3 and approaching in science and history, social studies. I will say that for every one of these areas, there was an increase in our ratings from our teachers, including ELD, which was below 4 last year and has now surpassed that, which is a good thing. And so we have, again, the standard here is, are we measuring it and analyzing it? We are, so we have met this particular standard as well. Next is how we are engaging our parents. You've seen these data, again, need to report them. We meet the full implementation standard as defined by the state established rating tool. I'm not here to tell you that we're perfect in this, but you saw from some of our data points that we had last time that 94.5% of our families are saying communication is easy to access and understand. That's good. And also a place for improvement. Yes, 61% are satisfied or very satisfied with our offerings, but we'd like to see that number increase. Even though that number is not where we want it to be at this point, it doesn't mean that we've not met the standard of measuring and analyzing these data. Our next one is around school climate. As we talked about last week, TUSD is using a more robust tool to measure this. So the first part of this is that you actually measure it, which we obviously do. that we have most of our students that are feeling connected to school, that they're identifying caring adults on campuses, and they're recognizing our high expectations. We still think too many of our students are reporting bullying and harassment, chronic sadness, suicidal ideation, so this is an area of focus for us with some of our resources. And we are seeing some improvement in these areas as our focus on social emotional learning has led to some improvements in these areas around attendance and suspensions. So this is another area that we have met. And last but not least, this priority 7 is access to a broad course of study. And so some of the ways we measure this is how well are our students in 3rd grade achieving. And so these are students who are reading at standard in MAP in 3rd grade. These numbers are essentially static from last year to this year, but these numbers are in our LCAP. 3rd grade is a really critical time to measure where students are with regard to reading. It's very predictive of their future success in schools. A new data point this year for us is the number of 12th graders who passed an AP exam. As we talked about last week, we saw almost a double in our scores with this. It's telling us that our students are, and that goes across the different racial and ethnic groups that you see listed there. It tells us that efforts to increase access to advanced placement courses are working, and also some room for growth here. And last but not least, a really critical one that's measured not only through the LCAP, but through our special education monitoring, is how many of our students are spending 80% or more of their time in what we call general education classes. And we are at 70.26%, which is an increase from the year prior as well. So again, this meeting the standard of, are we analyzing it? Yes. And are we measuring it? Yes. And we are doing those things, which means we are meeting the standards for local priorities. I will take any questions.
Just one, Nick, and just a general question. So we do all these measurements in all these areas, which gives us an idea and stuff, right? And with the good and the bad, right? Agreed? So in this whole process, there's no, I think it would kind of give an idea. I don't see any data like how many mandate reportings did this district have to do? And what's the state, whatever. I mean, that would show a little something, but that is just not included, correct?
That's not a required data point for this, for the local indicators. Now, locally, we can decide to measure whatever we want.
Right, but the state doesn't have a dashboard for it.
Not that particular data point, no.
Okay, thank you.
For mandated reports, is that was the,
Right.
okay, no, not for that data point.
Okay.
At least that I'm aware of.
And again, for the public, we dived into this quite a bit. That was a last meeting, which
Yeah,
was a week ago. So I just don't want anybody that's watching right now thinking, man, they're not even, we talked about it. If you could go back and tune in, anybody.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, it's a little glitch in the system, in my opinion. I believe that the local indicators should be at that first meeting, but they are actually required to be at this particular meeting.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
And these systems are designed to talk to each other. So if these data points were very different than what we're talking about in LCAP, then that's a miss. And I think I can confidently say that they are. They're
Right,
dovetailed.
but when you do the LCAP, like last week, you already have this in front of you, right?
You saw all these data points.
Right, okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to highlight something that's rather unique to our district, locally at least, which is the nature of the military child. For those who don't know, one of the first things you do when you find out you're being moved to a new base, at least in my family, I can't attest for everybody, but I think it's very common, is you go in and you look for local indicators. And as a military family, I'll just tell you now, we don't go into the LCAP, right? We're not looking for, the dashboard when we're moving from, you name the location, whether it's overseas, whether it's in the continental United States. But there are some indicators that I think are extremely important, but may not be driven by California Ed Code. And that's something as simple as, grade school summary ratings. And I think there's all kinds of metrics out there, and I'll say this. I don't know that they're accurate for our district. I would like to say, especially if there's already an existing metric, I would really love a little bit of an annotation for us to know, hey, what metrics do we think feed this? And I think the primary one is probably test scores on standardized tests. But I guess I'd like to ask the district to maybe dig into this a little bit, not to skew the numbers, but I will say to ensure that we can do everything we can to make sure the numbers are accurate. Because this one thing not only affects the perception of families that are moving to this area, they also affect national security because those same families do or do not want to move to certain locations based on these simple data. And we have enjoyed historically in Travis Unified School District good ratings, which has allowed the base to recruit the best folks to work over here at Travis Air Force Base. I'm not going to say the numbers have gone down, but there are trends that I would like us to take a quick look at to ensure they don't decline. But personally, Will Wade thinks this is probably one of the most important metrics that we could be looking at in addition to the very driven ed code metrics that we just were briefed on. And I would love if we had a way to positively update this to accurately reflect what we bring not only to the base, but to the community that we serve. So I don't want to create a huge homework project, but I do want to build a greater awareness on this because these are some of the most important metrics that folks across that fence look at every single day as they come and then they go. Would you agree, Tara?
I can agree, absolutely. I mean, especially for a family who's moving East Coast to West Coast, that's the first thing that you're going to want to look at is what school's there, what do the schools look like, and that could be the deciding factor of are we going to live on base and be in the Travis Unified School District, or are we going to be paying rent somewhere in Vacaville and be part of that district? So I can definitely attest to that.
There's the old saying, two things, neighborhood where you live and the schools where your children are going. So excellent point, excellent point. But I got to tell you, back in the late 70s, when I was in the Army, you just got told you're going there. Yeah, right. So things have changed for the good. But I spoke a little bit about, and it's true, a handful that because of the way our campuses look and this and that, they go. But I think if we highlighted a little bit more what you're saying, might even take that notion away, and they would feel more comfortable during their PCS process, so thank you very much. Thank you. Great thing. So with that said, we have no action on there, so we'll go on to point 3 then.
Yes. Welcome, Joe Lynn.
Thank you, Nick. So point 3, adoption of Campbell Biology, AP edition, 12th edition, published 2021 by Uri E.T.A.L. Pearson as advanced placement AP Biology course textbook on second and final reading. This is an action item. Again, I'll let you, Joe, what happened this week? Did anybody knock on the door and want to see this book or anything?
Nobody was knocking on our door for a textbook. Typically, we have textbook adoptions as a two-parter to give the community an opportunity to inspect said textbook. And if we had any reports, I would share that now, but there were no takers. So I respectfully ask for the board to approve the recommended textbook for AP Bio.
I have a question. So if we're expecting, or the cap for the AP Bio is 32, and we're only buying 32, would we not be favorable to buy like 34, just in case an extra copy gets lost, or anything? That way we already have them and aren't waiting to buy one?
Yeah. We certainly can buy a few extra copies and be prepared, should this program grow beyond one section, to buy more, but I think that's a good idea.
Okay, with hearing nothing further, this is an action item, I'm sorry. Do I have a motion and a second?
Do I need to change the?
I was going to say, so Brenda, maybe to just a point of order, Once you guys approve it, if we decide, even if enrollment changes in 6 months,
Okay.
once you've said you approve us to use this, we can increase
Oh,
the
okay.
purchase without coming to you
Okay.
each time. So you can approve it as written, and then we can amend our order.
Okay, cool.
Just to say it one other way, we're approving the curriculum, the district will decide how to
How
source the
many?
curriculum.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
You want me to make a motion, don't you?
Do you have a motion and a second?
I will motion to approve. Hold on, I have to go back, sorry. Oh, my God. I make a motion to approve the adoption of the camel biology?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to number 10. Approval of the 2025-26 proposed budget. This is an action item. I know I sound like a broken record, but for any of the public that is listening, we did the long discussion version last week. This is the approval time. Go ahead, Gabe, if you have.
As you said, this item is to approve the budget that was presented to you last week. Do I have any questions?
Gabe, for the new board members, will you, if we approve the budget tonight, can you just explain the process of how we'll get updates from you as the budget progresses over the year, just for the new board members' awareness?
Absolutely. So as I explained last week, we actually have to have our budget approved by our board before the state has to have their budget approved. So if there are any major changes between May Revise, which is where we get the most of our information, and the final Budget Act on June 30, we would have to do a 45-day budget revision. So that would mean we would basically bring back the same budget, just with whatever effects as a result of the changes between May Revise and the final Budget Act. If there aren't any major changes, then the next time we will give a budget update is at first interim. I like to try to do that in November. It's technically not due until December 15th, but those are actuals as of October 31 and any changes at that point. And then second interim, which is actuals as of January 31. I usually like to try to present that, excuse me, in February, but it's not due till March 15th to the county, and then we come right back along to the following June.
Go.
So for the new board members, this is Gabe's best guess, and there'll be many of opportunities to review and update based on the actuals. So thank you, Gabe, for all your hard work.
Gabe, one point. Would you consider contracts part of the budget?
I wouldn't consider them part of the budget. They are, they certainly have a large impact on the budget.
Okay. So with that said, I want to make one comment on contracts because it's dollar signs and it's part of the budget. What I do like is we used to approve contracts and then hopefully the board would approve them weeks later at the next meeting. There was always that chance that it might not happen and what could have caused us. What I do like is this just like a crumb in the budget thing is contracts come, get approved, and then you all execute them. I think that's a cleaner way of doing it. Now, when you say major changes, do you operate off a dollar figure if it needs to come? I mean, how do you make that decision?
Yeah, I mean, usually if we see a large change in like the outcome, like say there was a large enough change in COLA that would have an impact on the deficit or surplus of the year, yeah, we would bring that back just to kind of show you what that is. If they, if the budget had proposed a one-time, like what they did this year, but instead decided to make it ongoing, we would bring that back with a multi-year to show the board the effects of that. There isn't a set dollar amount. It is kind of a year-by-year basis, but I probably would not for under, what's considered a materiality amount for audit purposes, which in our general funds, give or take $300,000.
Great, thank you. Hearing no more, this is an action item. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Gabe, don't go anywhere. Adoption resolution number 2024-25-37, allowing action on the Gold Ridge property surplus sale if no progress occurs within 180 days. This is an action item. Before you say anything, Gabe, you got a super short notice on this one, so the board thanks you for getting this done for us. Go ahead.
Yes, so per the board's conversation last week, we prepared this resolution basically stating that, if there's no movement by the, between the city and developer within the next 180 days with respect to, selling the property, but something more concrete, that the board and the district will move ahead with next steps to sell that property.
The only thing I ask is, I'm not going to go into the big, what's happened, but the sooner we get rid of it, the better it's for us financially. Let's say we get to 150 days and there's no takers. Will you guys start early pre-planning so when that 180-day goes, we're up and running?
We can. I think some things may require some board approval in terms of next steps, so we could.
Be it 180 days, yeah.
Right, so we would have to come back, give you an update at that point and inform you of actions that we would have to take if you wanted to be ready for actual auction sale by the end of that 180 days.
Okay, one last comment is I've already expressed how important I feel we get rid of this, but I'm never going to forget the fact that I, as one board member, told the community that I would never vote for something to happen there that wouldn't be accepted in their community. So I'm just putting that out there. We'll still stay focused that way.
On that note, can I just get clarification and confirmation? Gabe, thank you for the record for putting this together so quickly. I'm happy with the way that it's worded, but I just want to make sure before we vote on this, I understand clearly the intent. At the 180-day point, if no offer of the purchase of the property is received, the board shall direct the superintendent or designee to proceed with the process of offering the property for sale in accordance with applicable laws. With that said, any reasonable offer that comes in, the board will have the opportunity to review and decide of whether we accept it. We're not committing ourselves to anything by passing this resolution.
Absolutely not, no.
Okay, thank you.
But also, just to elaborate, you don't need, after 180 days, to come back to the board. At 181 days, you're going to start the process. This is what the resolution's directing, correct?
Right, so the only things we would have to that would have to come back to the board. So next step is, there are other entities we have to offer it to and give them opportunity to give us offers on it. None of those are interested. Then we would go ahead and proceed with public sale. There will have to be one board meeting prior to a public sale where the board will have to approve things, or basically approve that auction sale before we move forward with it. So that would be the thing that would have to come to the board. And then obviously any offers.
And then the flip side of that, that the board requires the approval of that sale, but the board also has the discretion of saying thank you, but no thank you on any of those offers as well. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that said, this is an action item to approve Resolution 2024-25-37. Do I have a motion and a second? All move.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Gabe. Number 11, Human Resources. Consideration of approval of new job description for Director of Student and Auxiliary Services. Board, this is an action item. Vince, go ahead.
All right, members of the board, I'm bringing forward to you a new job description for a position, Director of Student Auxiliary Services. This is a direct result of a restructure of several of our departments, our transportation, our child nutrition, and warehouse departments, which would all fall under one director. The responsibilities would all fall under one director. So we're bringing this forward to the board today for approval. As a result of this restructuring, we are anticipating a cost savings of approximately $100,000 because we are combining two positions to one.
So Vince, with the cost savings and the restructure here, we get a lot of this, there'll be no single transportation manager in the other areas. And there's enough time in the day and the week for whoever is hired to handle all these with no extra stress on them, correct?
Absolutely, and this is one position that's going to oversee both of those departments.
Right.
And I'm sorry if I should know this, is this already a position that's filled and we're just renaming whoever the person is?
So we have someone who has been acting as an interim, but they have not been formally named to this position until the board takes action to approve the position and salary schedule.
Okay, so another question, because it was actually questions were brought to me this last week about this. The question that some people have had is the proper training going to happen for the person who takes this spot as far as the current class coming up in November for the California Department of Education? They have a transportation administration course. Didn't know either, nothing about transportation, so.
I do know that, so the person who's currently the interim is a very high achieving and individual who does take it upon herself to learn the regulations and has already begun that work. That said, like Superintendent Benson stated, is that person can't be named to this position at this time. We want to create the position first. But any sort of support and training that we would need to provide, that would be something that we would definitely want to provide to that individual or whoever's in that position.
So just to confirm, they will be fully certified for this position when the position opens and they're appointed? Cool. Thank you.
Yes.
On that note, Vince, I know we tailored this based on our very highly qualified member of the district that is could potentially assume this role and position, which I applaud the district in thinking out of the box and taking advantage of, our best resource, which is our human capital. So thank you. My question is, if and when our highly qualified director with significant amount of training and qualifications decides to change jobs or districts or whatever it may be, are we setting ourselves up for long-term success following for the next director of, what's the actual title here?
Student Auxiliary Services?
Yeah, is it an unreasonable request to lump all this together for a future hiring action? Or do you think that this is something that we could sustain, or do you predict that we would have to modify it in the future?
I'd say in a district our size, we do have to explore all options.
Sure.
And this is an option that, we are looking at right now. We realistically probably couldn't expect someone to come in with all of these experiences.
Right.
We do have someone who's learning this experience, but just as, Member Brenda mentioned, anyone coming into a position is going to require some type of training to help get them up to speed in one domain over the other.
So I guess my only comment would be that whenever that time turns over the Director of Student Auxiliary Services, that we kind of remember that we created this for cause, but I don't think we have to be so locked into it that we're setting somebody up for failure in the future.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that said, this is an action item. I'm looking for a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, moving on to 11.2, consideration of approval of the updated salary schedule for unrepresented employee group. This is an action item. Vince?
So in front of you, you do have our salary schedule for unrepresented individuals. There's no financial change from last week's salary schedule. The changes on this document are really cosmetic or clarification. So if you see item number 2, director and manager, those is just to clarify those positions. And previously, what we had is we named the exact name of the position, but this allows us some flexibility when there is a director. We know what salary line and step that they will be at.
And again, broken record here, we did discuss this and we had it up last week.
Yes.
Okay, with nothing said, this is an action item. I'm looking for a motion and a second, please.
So moved.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vince. We're moving to number 12. We have a public comment on number 12. Mark?
I think we all realize that a lot of hard work needs to be done in this district to improve test scores, and really not just to get them up to a level that looks good to our peers, but beyond that, one of excellence. And I just don't see that with cell phones being a part of our classroom experience. So let me give you a little bit of history. We once collected student cell phones when they had them out in class, and they were sent to the front office. And one day, our front office secretaries kind of discovered that they had $10,000 to $20,000 worth of cell phones in front of them and didn't want to be a part of this anymore. And so the policy was abandoned. And I remember that next year, I had a class that was particularly defiant, and I was seeing 6, 7 kids with phones. You know, this was, I can't say it was a culture that I was participating in, but they were entering in and testing me with. And I told them to put them away. And there were 3 kids that still refused not to. So I took the 3, in fact, I told them to give me their phones. And they said, "You can't confiscate our phones." And I said, "Yes, I can." I said, "If you don't give them to me, I'm going to call it defiance. I'm going to write your phone." So reluctantly, they gave them to them, and I returned them at the end of the period. Now, I want to say this too. I was overly aggressive. And that is not my way to be a teacher. Usually when I have students, and I remember one in particular, his name was Patrick. He was American Indian, and he had a lot of problems. And he came in spring, and he had no transcript that was really worthy of a freshman status, but he was there nevertheless. And he said to me one day, he said, "You know, Mr. Novak, you're the only teacher who hasn't written me a referral or kicked me out of their class." And I said, "I know, Patrick. It's because I try to work with you." And with all students, when they were not doing what I was asking them to do, I said, "Look, what can I do for you? What can I do for you to get you what you do?" So if I'm becoming overly aggressive, it's because there's a real problem. So this is a ridiculous battle that teachers fight day in and day out. It is consuming, it is taxing, it is stressful. And it would be a good thing for our students and our teachers to relieve us of this duty. It is just too much. It is overwhelming. Our policy right now is to give a kid a tardy when they have their phone out. If they don't go to, to give them detention. If they don't go to detention, then they get a second detention. If they don't go to the third detention, they go to Saturday. They have Saturday school. If they don't go to Saturday school, nothing really happens. So they have their phones out. They're out. And really, in order to create a culture, is just to have a policy where bell to bell, they're not allowed, nobody. And if a teacher doesn't want to comply with bell to bell, then they should go find a district somewhere else. Because we need to have structure and order, and we need to create a good culture in our classes. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. Board, just so you know, how did student cell phone use make it to the agenda? I put it on there, and I want to give you the short version of why. It's because of the outreach of the teachers. Tremendous outreach. Mark being the president of the teachers' bargaining unit, I've had several discussions with him. So what I asked for, and I think Nick's going to give a little bit of it here in a minute, I asked Tiffany for, let me see all the discipline for this last school year. So I was provided with a spreadsheet, and it had numbers on them, and I thank you for that, and I know they're real numbers that the school has, but there's a flip side of this, which teachers tell me. Those numbers, they tell me matter no good, because here's what's happened. In the classroom, we have to tell students several times to please put them away. That's taking part of the learning period. And then if we have to report them, that's taking another part of the learning period. So at the end of the day, those numbers teachers are telling me that are accurate for what they know, but not accurate because teachers give up, because we're using way, way, way too much time. I'm not even going to go down the road about how many no cell phones there are now and how everybody's doing it. So I firmly believe, and there's a couple dozen teachers have confirmed this with, my recommendation is there's no phones at all from bell to bell. That means from the first bell when school starts to the last bell when school's out. Doesn't mean they can't have them for emergencies or in their backpack, but they cannot come out, period. Here's the thing, and I asked a lot of questions, and this is in real time, right? There was a little bit about, well, we use them, we don't have enough laptops and things. And I understand what a handful of teachers, but that handful, most of them said, if the planning was right and what we do have available and we can move them around, we can facilitate that with the laptops. And that could happen very, very easily, but here's the thing that kind of resonates with me a little bit. We work ourselves, everybody does it real hard. We pass Measure R. We extracurricular, no matter what it is so important, and we do this, and this building needs this, and this building needs this, and this needs that. Those are all way up here on my list. But now let's talk about the square classroom. What can we do to help those teachers inside that square classroom every period, which fuels all this other great stuff we can? And the teachers tell me, no cell phones, no earbuds, none of these watches. So I guess what I'm saying is we're getting really good at fixing a lot of things, but we never talk about what happens in those four walls when the bell rings and the kids walk in. And then I'm telling you, and there's nobody can change this, the overwhelming number of teachers at this campus say, kids, just put them away. So now I'm thinking back as a parent. Tyler had his cell phone. Nobody talked about it then. I think we got more about it. But if I was sending Tyler to Vanden High School tomorrow, knowing what I know now and stuff, I'd probably tell him to leave it in the parking lot in his truck. I don't think it has a place in the classroom. So I won't say any more on this issue. My recommendation is come back come back in August meeting with something that goes bell to bell. And it's, again, it's happening everywhere. And mom and dad, I'm not saying leave that phone at home or anything, but leave it in the backpack, because our main mission here is, as parents, when we send our kids to school, everything else is great, but is in those four walls. And I think that it's the right thing to do, and we need to take this problem away from the teachers. So any other board member, go ahead, you're welcome to chime in.
So I'm fully on board with the no cell phone policies in classrooms. I think the one thing that really kind of irritates me is, as a parent, I'm on board with it, but as teachers, they're not on board with it. Because there was plenty of teachers that Coda had last year that were allowing her to use her cell phone. And so that kind of hinders me going, okay, you can't use it, but your teacher's saying you can. Where do I go with that as a parent? And the biggest thing for me is, I agree, again, I wholeheartedly agree with no cell phones, making a policy, telling teachers, but then you get the teachers who are still going to allow it, and they're going to become the favorite teachers, where everyone wants to go or be at because they allow cell phone usage. Also with that, it kind of to your point with teachers having to take the time out. I just don't know that I think that if we do bell to bell, that it's going to prevent students from still having cell phones. Like, I just don't know where. Because again, I agree with you, but I don't know that that's going to prevent teachers having to still take time to deal with cell phone usage. Only because, I mean, you tell half these kids not to use it, they're still going to use it. So we still have that time taken away. So honestly, I don't really know what the answer is. I'm just not sure. I'm not saying that we shouldn't try it. I just don't know that still won't take time because kids aren't going to use it. I'm not sure. I don't know.
So I can only tell you what I researched at one school and I quit. When they did bell to bell and the kids brought them out, admin was calling the parents to come get the phone, and they wanted them to get it that day, and then the parents really get involved and support, and it turned real quick.
I would agree if we do make the parents come to the school to get them, that I'm sure there will be plenty of parents who are then telling their kids to not do it. But again, we go back to, what are we going to do with teachers who are allowing it? Are they going to be then disciplined, or like, do the parents have to tattle? Like, how does that work?
I don't know. That would be a question for the superintendent.
I wanted to chime in. I definitely think cell phone is a huge issue. I spoke with a few of the teachers just on the elementary side, and they're like, it is a problem, but maybe not as much as, of course, our middle school and our high school. I definitely think we need to change our disciplinary actions on that. I feel like we need to go a little bit harder instead of just having a warning or a tardy. If it's your first offense, then it's going to get taken away. If it's your second, it's going to be a detention. If it's your third, maybe you're going to get suspended. I feel like we have to go a little bit harsher on our disciplinary to empower our teachers to be able to use that and give them a voice, because if we keep it how it is, the teachers are going to lose steam in wanting to continue the fight that we're putting out there to say bell to bell, if we don't have anything to help back our teachers. My opinion.
Mark.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
So I'll just chime in. When Governor Newsom passed Assembly Bill 3216 in September, which mandated that the school have a policy, we dusted off our old policy with a lot of feedback, and we acknowledged we had a decent policy, which I think we need to provide the rest of the board members, by the way, so they can review that. But to your point, it wasn't adequately enforced. Nor do I think it was necessarily realistic for the teachers to provide the level of enforcement that was articulated in it. So much like I said then, and For the record, I was actually, I think, the board member who advocated for the strictest policy, but received significant pushback, which was fine. But I will say it needs to be, compliance-based. It needs to have enforcement mechanisms that are manageable, and it needs to be consistent. And administrators can do so much, but I'm going to look at the president of the union and say, we got to make sure that the teachers have what they need, not only to enforce it, but also to be consistent. Because to your point, Jerry, or Brenda, that one teacher who's the softie can make the whole house of cards come tumbling down. And I have plenty of adages as well from the military of, you always say, you start hard and then you can relax a bit, but it's always hard to do it the other way around, where you start, easy, and then you try to enforce discipline, and it just doesn't work. So I'm a big fan of starting off hard and then making it consistent and then reevaluating as necessary. But I look forward to seeing what the district comes back with, but I will, again, compliance, enforcement, and consistency are my biggest things that I want to make sure that any policy that we approve would be able to ensure that those are incorporated into them.
So with that said, and you're right, you were the hardcore person, and I went back and I researched that, and I learned you were, I don't want to say you were right, but you had a good plan, and I could see that plan, if we were back there. Well, one thing that Brenda kind of said too, and I know this is going to happen, and I'm not sitting here as a board member, I'm sitting here as a former volunteer here for years and years and years. I know this is going to happen. What's going to happen is these kids know which teachers are going to let this happen, and nobody's going to find out, and those classes are going to be, they're going to be maxed out when kids should be taking other classes. I think that's what I picked up a little bit with what you said, Brenda. But, that's kind of like, I agree with everybody here, but, I don't think it's one thing a little bit with Mark. I think it's more the principal. I mean, you could very well advocate to the teachers and stuff, but I'm sorry, I've heard too, and parents too. I only did a handful of parents, and I can tell you right now, standing on a doorstep, and they looked at me like I was stupid, and I get it. We send our kids to school to learn, not take videos, do social, all that kind of stuff. That's not what we send our kids to school for. And, and then you hear from the teachers. So am I hearing, first off, I'm going to break the rules for 1 second since we have such a huge audience here and we're crushed for time. Mark, I saw you go like this. I'm only giving you 60 seconds. Okay.
Teachers need to follow board policy or force-based discipline. That's pretty simple. The old policy worked. If we had some sort of save going from 1 to 100 and a kid got a ticket, we don't want kids suspended from school. We want kids in the classroom, but they can't use their phone. Now it's punishment. Teachers need to comply.
So what I'm hearing is,
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm not hearing anyone talking about a hybrid option where they can use their phones before school, after school, or during lunchtime, and I'm wondering why there is no advocacy for that.
I did bell to bell from when the first bell rings to the last. I left out in between classes and lunch and everything, because once the kids pull them out and get them in their hands, people are, the kids, you know, if they're doing this or that, I see it all the time, or they take extra breaks to go to the bathroom when they really don't have to, because they've got to do this, and it just goes on and on and on. The research I did is, it works if it's just bell to bell, period.
And Suzanne, I'll say too, if you look at our current policy, I would say it's definitely more of a hybrid approach. It allows options in there, and that's where the consistency gets skewed, because it's not necessarily consistently applied. But yeah, I highly encourage you to see the current policy, and I look forward to seeing what the changes are. But I consider the current one a hybrid, to your point.
But I see Suzanne's point as far as the hybrid goes, and you're correct in the fact that we didn't talk about the hybrid option, because I do agree that in today's world, we have to teach our kids how to, and I'm not saying the school has to teach them, but they do have to learn how to actually communicate and use these technologies and stuff like that properly and at the right time and the right place. So I can see why we may let them use it during passing period and lunches, because to your point, as far as consistency goes, there's going to have to be consistency either one we do. There's going to have to be consistency if we do hybrids where we're allowing them to do it during passing periods. And I say that because there's plenty of times where Coda and Guard, they've made up some practice after school where they're trying to text the entire team because they don't see them all throughout the day, where they're texting the entire team so they can meet up after school. So I see some points to things where they might need it during the day, or if Coda needs to answer me or needs to pick up my son and daughter. So I see where it may be used during the day for important things. Again, they're going to use social media, so let's be real. That's just going to happen if we allow them to use it during passing period. But I do see that as an option, so that they're not using it in class, but they are still somewhat getting it throughout the day, so that maybe they'd be less, if we do implement this and we are really consistent and really, like we have this whole disciplinary process and that happens, then at least maybe if they have it during passing period and lunch period, maybe they're less likely to say, I've got to use it here or there, whatever. As far as the bathroom goes, Coda's history teacher had a note, you had to leave your cell phone to go to the bathroom, and I absolutely love that policy. So if we can write that in, if we do decide to do the hybrid and we write that in as an option, I highly encourage that because I absolutely loved it.
So what I'm hearing from the board, and board, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not going to sit here and give the superintendent direction. The superintendent has heard what we've said, and we're going to ask you to bring something back in August. I can tell you this, though, I'd like to say, it could be a hybrid, it could be this, you know what you bring back, but if there's no consequences, and if the school is not geared up to be consistent and treat everybody the same, and the motion passes, and that goes on, I'll be at every board meeting bringing it up. So it's got to be a model that's going to work. And you know, we all know it, the kids, and I'd probably do it if I was a kid, it's raining or it's cold, which it is here, and they got their hoodie up, which is fine to keep warm, and they go in the classroom, but they got the earbuds in, you know, or they got their Apple Watch working. It needs to be, all of that needs to be there, but I think more important is, and I'm not the principal, whatever it is, there needs to be a mechanism, and I'm kind of echoing Will said, it has to work, and it has to be consistent all the way across the board. And teachers have to follow it. I don't think any principal, teacher, or superintendent, or anybody has the authority to take a board bylaw or directive and make it suit them. So anyway, board, if that's okay, we'll leave it in the superintendent's team's hands and bring us back something in September?
Question for you.
August, I'm sorry, August.
Will the board meet before the start of school? So that this, one day prior? Do we think that we should meet prior to that so that we can get our teachers on board and behind us so that when we do start school the next day, we are rolling out new school year, new policy, and everybody is kind of going into this new school year with this new mindset of this new inherited policy?
So what would be the problem if we took the August meeting Tuesday and we moved it up one Tuesday? That's a week and 1 day before the start of school. Could we do that?
Or do a special board meeting just for this.
Or a special board meeting just for this?
I would say of those two options, having a special and dedicated board meeting would probably be a little easier because it doesn't involve changing the workflow for like just the summer contracts and Williams and different things
Right.
that we do in August.
So when do the teachers report back before school?
The Monday before school.
So can we do this? Because when they come back Monday, no kids are here, so that would be the time, right? Could we set up a special meeting that everybody can make before the day they report back? I know Vanden, if they haven't changed, the first day back, every teacher will be in here and the principal would be up there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure Golden West is the
Yes.
same.
Yes.
Is that okay if we'll set on a date, and the date will definitely be before that, and we'll just leave this as the only issue? We'll, unless it's something emergency, we'll have just this issue on the agenda?
I will say it's fine with me, just with, knowing what date it is.
Well, I think it's important all of us are here.
Right.
I know you have a tough schedule, Tiffany, so why don't we start with Brenda and move,
Sure.
just get us all together if you can, please.
Sure. Can I ask some clarifying questions if this is going to be sort of my last time with the whole team?
Can I throw one more suggestion before you
Yes.
clarify everything?
Yes.
Is there a possibility, and I know, sorry, Mark, if you don't like this, is there a way to take out the student cell phone policy and make this a school-wide, everyone included, just so students aren't feeling targeted?
Teachers have a duty-free lunch.
No, I meant if we do hybrid, not, I'm sorry, I meant in class only for teachers, sorry.
The teachers should never be.
And I haven't heard any complaints of that, I'm just trying to gear it towards kind of an all-school, everyone's included type of thing.
So correct me if I'm wrong. So you have, let's just use Vanden, right?
Correct.
You have 3 or 4 campus monitors, right? And I get it, the look would be bad if the campus monitor's looking around texting or talking. So I think what you're saying is
Everyone across the board.
lead by example,
Exactly,
everybody.
100%.
Can I interject? Just, because we're launching Catapult, I feel like all of our teachers need to have access to their phones at all times. And I feel like if we take away the visibility of that with our teachers, what if they leave it on their desk because they're adhering to the policy and we have a Catapult notification and now we can't respond?
Well, yeah, but I mean, for me, if you put it in a drawer, or even having it out, I don't even mind having it out. For me, it's more just making sure that everyone's just adhering to the policy that we're putting out as far as cell phones go and not using them, whether it be in class, whether it be a campus monitor, whether it be in the front office, or anything like that. Obviously, emergencies for, even students, I assume, are still related to this emergency policy.
So we're at an interesting point. I want to first say thanks, board, for solve cell phones. I did notice that. But what I want to do is, can I ask you some questions about priorities and get some feedback from you? Because if we move forward with a draft policy, what we did find, and if Nick has an opportunity to share just a little bit, what we did find was there is both a diversity of opinion between families and staff. So taking the students out for a second about their beliefs about cell phone use, looking at teachers and families, there's not an agreement on whether or not it should be more restrictive or not used. The other thing is, there seems to me to be a real misalignment between what parents are thinking their children are doing during the school day, and what even students who might be slightly more conservative or saying they're better than they are in like following the rules are saying they're doing during the school day. The only reason I raise that is because if we make a policy, even before school starts, and roll it out in August, I really need to hear from the board what your fortitude is for pushback. If there is an appearance, I don't believe this is true. I believe the board has been talking about this all year, and to Will and Matt's point, even prior years. But if we make a policy before the school year starts, it will feel like to some that we have ignored their feedback. And so what I want to ask this board is, how important is that? The reason I say is the compromise is, do we want to prioritize gathering feedback and then creating a policy? Or do we want to prioritize creating a policy and then telling people what it is? Those are two different timelines. We can do both. We can do either. But I really need to hear from the group, when we engage our community, our teachers, our parents, our families, do you want it to tell them about the policy that you have decided on? Or do you want to gather feedback because you feel like you need more information to make a decision? Either is fine, but the timeline is different.
But with that said, we have the mechanism through Aries and everything else to send out from the 6th grade to the 12th grade to everybody, and like right away, and say, hey, this is what's coming forward. You've got a couple months here. Reach out to the district staff, whoever it is, reach out to a board member, and open that door for opinions and stuff, you know?
I
And
think
then it doesn't have the authoritarian look, you know? I know that, I think I did pretty good due diligence, and I would love to hear from another dozen or two parents, you know? I think that's our best way to communicate what's going on, through June, July, and then into August, And if everybody will get the message. If there's a parent that wants to voice themselves, they'll voice themselves.
I think I think as a new board, we've been really receptive at taking suggestions, comments, and getting information. So personally, I think doing a survey, and I only say survey because it usually takes out all the extra stuff that might not be needed. I think during a survey, but I would also include elementary school. It's a big thing in elementary school right now. So I think that including elementary school parents, because they have a lot of opinions and views as far as the younger children now, just getting younger and younger, having cell phones. I have a kid in kindergarten who has a cell phone, and it's insane to me, but I'm not that parent, so I think that we should personally include elementary school in that too.
I just want to interject, just for the cell phone policy, as far as elementary school, from the teachers that I had reached out to and I had spoken to, they feel as if their policy is good. They don't feel like they're having any real big issues as much as GW and Vanden does. In my opinion, I feel like it's easier to adhere to a new policy at the beginning of the school year. Everything's new, you're kind of coming into a new 6th grade wing, you're really your outlook on this is first day of school, everything's new, you're getting the syllabus from all your teachers, so in my opinion, it's easier to roll it out in the beginning of the year than to kind of change it mid-year.
I'll provide a realist approach to your question, Tiffany. We're not going to get this right. Period. We're not going to make everybody happy. But I think our responsibility is to the educational environment, and there are only a few professional educators in this room. And I think the professional educators have to tell us what you guys think right looks like. And then I think we have to commit. And I don't have a problem coming up with a policy developed by educators for educational environment, and then informing the public what our policy is. Now, does that mean it can't change? Absolutely not. But we are not going to appease everybody. We are not going to make everybody happy. But we need to do what we say we're here to do, which is to ensure the best educational environment for our students. And if we have that at our core, I think, that is who we are and what we do. And I'm willing to be a bit draconian. But I said this last time too, hey, if we're going to do this, we got to do it. And jump in with both feet. So as one board member, I have zero problem giving basic intent, but then asking the educators to come back and tell us what they think right looks like. And then once we do, have about the 80% solution, execute it and see how it goes, acknowledging that nobody has solved this problem. And it's kind of like world hunger, we can only do our best. But I think we've got a problem. I think it's only going to get worse over time, and we've got an opportunity to intervene. But I agree with Tiara. If we're going to do it, it only makes sense to me that we do it at the beginning of the school year. And I know Matt's going to shoot me for saying this, but consistently say it. If we can't do it by the end of the school year, my recommendation is we relook at it and see what milestone we do implement it at. But I don't think we should do implement something 2 months into the school year, for example. It's got to be well-informed, educated, and if we do a special meeting, I think we need to get the word out and say, hey, here's the draft policy, we're going to talk about it, bring your feedback, but at the end of the meeting, we're going to slap the meeting, and this is going to be the policy, if that's what we want to do. That's my recommendation.
And I'm not going to shoot you, I agree with you 100%. The only thing I want to say, if the teachers are the professional educators and they're saying what is hindering them from giving the kids the best education, and I can't see that many parents not agreeing with that, because that's what they send their sons and daughters to school for, is to learn. And if there's a handful of parents, which there will be, that says, Matt, you're crazy, and raise hell with me, and I get when you started it, I want to do the right thing here, whatever the repercussions are. It's got to be the right thing. And if we're going to task someone to survey the teachers, let's just use Vanden as an example, then survey all of them. Because I personally, as one board member, don't want to come back and say, okay, so you have 80% of the teachers that say this. How many is 80%? And what are, so if we're going to do it, and I agree with Will 100%, I'm solid. When we do special meeting, the action item, whatever the board decides, that's what we go with, and we're consistent with it, type thing,
I would also agree that if we do this policy, that we do it at the start. As far as the survey goes, if we can do it before then, I wouldn't mind hearing opinions and things. Not that it would be a determining factor on anything that we did. But yeah, I would agree that the start of the school year is when we should start it.
Right, but my recommendation on the survey is this is just my opinion, staff doesn't need to send out formal surveys and then get them and calculate this. I think that we need to get the word out to all the parents. This is what's happening. Here's the way you can communicate if you want to, whatever you want to communicate, here's the avenue to do it. And leave it up to the parents to do that. Because when parents send you emails and text messages and things like that, or I get parents that represent a group of 4 or 5 parents, I know it's coming straight from them. And I want to read that. Surveys are fine. I'm not a fan of a survey like this put out by the district, because we don't know who's filling them out, and we just don't know. If the parents, if it's a concern to them and they want to voice an opinion, and we notify them, they'll take advantage of that opportunity.
I'll just chime in too, and Superintendent, to your point, based on the timeline the board has given you, based on the intent, it's a little overwhelming, especially given the summer break. I will point out, too, that almost all of these policies will probably have a resource element to it. We're talking about $1,000 phones plus, you know, and how do you adequately secure them? What do you do with them? And I would assume that some of these, you know, suggestions may come with a resource element. And I'll just say, board, we may be setting the district up if we're going to decide in a special meeting a couple weeks before kids show up, and oh, by the way, now there's a significant resource element associated with it, that the district is reluctant to make purchases. Let's just say, one of the things we talked about was, hey, when you come into the classroom, there's going to be a standardized thing where you put your phone in a sleeve, and it's in every classroom. Or, hey, like we do now, you know, this classroom is okay to use phones. The teacher has a methodology of communicating that via a stoplight chart on their board, and every student sees that same stoplight in every single classroom, and it's consistent. There are some that probably are not resource limited, but I'd hate to put the district in a bad place, not just from a policy perspective, but also from a resourcing perspective, if the board hasn't given you enough time or resources to effectively implement what could be a very significant policy change within the district. So I'll just throw that up.
And just kind of coming off those two, I'd like to know if there's any liability for the district as far as making them leave it in their backpack if it's stolen because they've gone to the bathroom, they've done whatever, and they can't take their phone, or however that goes, if there's any type of liability that we would have as far as that goes.
I haven't heard of that in particular. I think more what I have heard of is if we take a phone and then the student comes back and says, oh, the screen wasn't broken before you took it, or that's, or if we actually do have an error and we lose a phone, or if something happens, I believe there would be liability around that. I mean, I look to Gabe, but yeah.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if they have to be in the backpacks, the kids don't go anywhere without their backpacks. If they have to go to the restroom and it's 30 seconds before the bell ring, and I was a teacher, I'd say take your backpack with you. You know, I don't ever remember hearing any problems with thefts of backpacks because the kids have them with them all the time. You know, we don't have lockers here. They move with their backpacks. I don't think we need to spend a dime on, my personal opinion, securing them anywhere. You know, if mom and dad are going to let them bring them to school and whatever the policy says, then put it in your backpack, you know? I don't know. I ask that you get the word out to the parents, and if parents want to say something, they'll communicate with everybody, you know? And we'll do the meeting, I don't want to be the board president and here at a meeting over this issue if we're all not present. We got to do it so we're all here.
So what I'm hearing and sort of the priorities are we want something, a policy that addresses kind of the concerns of more limitation of cell phones on our campuses and a consistent message for all stakeholders, teachers, students, administrators, families about that. You'd like to see a draft or options around those policy revisions at a meeting before our August 12th board meeting, and some communication around community really publicizing that this will be a board meeting solely on this topic, and that this will be the opportunity for them to share feedback or thoughts or experiences and influence the policy, because at that meeting, you will be giving us direction and I believe deciding for the policy for the upcoming year. Is that correct?
I think that nailed it. I think we're okay there, right?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Then I will also say, kind of, Will, to your point, if, what I'm also hearing is where the restriction is the most important, or we want uniformity, consistency, is within the classroom, time, not just location, so with the bathroom passes, but during the classroom time, that there's maybe more flexibility on lunch before or after school. And there is not a desire to make it so that students do not have access to their phone in case of an emergency during the school day. Is that also correct?
I agree.
Correct.
I'll disagree, and I'll say, tell us what you recommend.
Oh, okay. Okay,
I don't think it's a
Okay.
foregone conclusion, though.
okay,
That's the way it has to be.
okay.
So I would like the professionals to
Full
let us know what
options.
your recommendation is personally.
Absolutely. And also, any resource components that we think would be necessary or helpful, because I think that there are some that are necessary for certain policies and some that would be helpful but are not necessary, that we would bring it forth at the same time.
And then I would also say, the last thing I would want to know is feasibility of implementing it for this school year, depending on what the policy is you recommend. It may or may not be feasible, and I would appreciate knowing your recommendation on whether we're at that point.
Can I throw one more thing at you? Sorry. I know, I'm sorry. Is there a possibility, I know we said bell to bell as far as kind of how it works today. Is there a possibility of adding in extracurricular activities that are graded to this policy? Because I can tell you that we have a problem with it in some of our extracurricular activities, and there is not a whole lot that we have figured out that we can do about it as far as enforcing it,
Yes.
because it's after school.
I was going to say, that's where we're going to run into some problem, I mean, just not digging in deeply, but that's where we're going to run into more technical issues.
I just didn't know,
Well, let me
since it's
dig
a
into it.
graded class, if it
Yeah,
meant anything, we could still use it as,
yeah, I think we can make a policy. We'll have to think more about
Okay.
what enforcement would look like, especially things that might be like an off-campus event or a performance or different things along those lines. But let me dig in a little more.
okay.
Okay, so with that said, you have your marching orders here. My last thing is for the public, I represent the people that voted for me in the public, but I also represent the teachers that educate our students. So I'm anxious to see the comments. I'm anxious to see what you come back with. And I think I'm going to when we do this special meeting, I'm going to let the guy sitting to my right open it, because I like what you say, sir, on this issue. So we'll look forward to that, and we'll move on then, if it's okay. Nick, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I think we're good, right?
I'll tell you what, I've done enough talking last 2 board meetings.
Okay, all right, so with, right, 12.2 that we added on, we're going to, this is our second meeting here, and we made some adjustments, so we're going to hear the board's comments about, are we going to stay here or go back down there? Mine are really simple because I kind of did this, so my one thing is the room we have, because every meeting we have elementary schools and we have awards, and we're doing so much more of that. I think we need another TV back there, which the Vanden principal said we could use the one and wheel it over, screen back there. I know that we asked, the Vanden principal is here with us.
Yes.
And she said everything, it's not a problem at all. The other thing is, if the board agrees, when we move our equipment, that's only for our use down there. Now, it's for whoever's authorized to use it, and it's just not board equipment. And we can always make a little more adjustment here. So let's just go down the line. I say yes to stay here. Can we just kind of pigtail right down the line? Will, you're up.
I always like going last. I was trying to usher it that way. No, I will say I'm good at either venue, and I would prefer the one that is easiest on the staff.
I was actually just going to say that. I was actually going to ask IT, how, is it more difficult for you to set this venue up? Is it easier for, because I don't have a preference either way. I think to Will's sentiment, whatever is easiest for you.
Given the time and resources to retrofit this with the appropriate equipment, both venues would work for us in terms of setup. Just given that time in the summer, so that we're ready to rock and roll for August, we fit for the board meeting. Kind of already talked about what we need to do, if possible.
And then my other add-on to it is when school's in session and there's basketball or anything happening here as far as parking, or if this is going to be utilized, are we ever going to be overlapping? I mean, I know that that's kind of far-fetched as far as schedule, but just kind of ballpark.
There will, I would say in the spring, it's possible for basketball. I'm thinking of sports that often often play on Tuesdays that draw a bigger crowd. I would say basketball. If we ever did a special meeting in a different day, that would be something. Matt, I'm not sure if you can think of any other,
Yeah.
otherwise we'd plan around.
It would be the winter, hit and miss on the one Tuesday a month, or if we had a special meeting, if they were away or at home. But there's a simple solution for that, because we have the entire student parking lot on meeting. When we open the gate, the yellow gate up here, whether it's an hour before the meeting or whatever, and our signboards that says school board meeting parking only, and we've got we'll never fill this up right here. Will some basketball parents sneak in and park there? Yeah, but we can still hold it with that sign.
On that note, just to confirm, like tutoring or anything in this actual facility itself, that will be able to minimize those impacts to the student services as well?
Yeah, so we did talk to Principal Shields, and she said, on that one meeting day a month, they would probably have tutoring in a different location. We already do that when we use this space for other facilities, because for other events. So it would not be abnormal. It wouldn't be something that is an added stress for the library team. We would just know. Fortunately, you guys have already voted on all of the board meetings for next year, so we can very easily plan around it. It would truly only be the special meetings that we would need to accommodate, and I don't think it would be a huge issue.
I prefer this facility. I think it's much more spacious, not as crowded. Also looks more professional than the black drapes hanging that we get tangled into when we're rolling our chairs out. And I think, Matt, did you say there would be an additional screen? Because that would be the only issue is for us way down here.
Chris offered that we can roll the one right over there, and then we can have it like behind where Mark
Okay.
is for the
Yeah.
board.
That'd be great. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, that's my vote.
I prefer the space. I'm okay with either spaces. I just like the flexibility and room in here, especially when we get the large groups. So it makes it a lot easier to kind of do things here. Oh, and I appreciate the curve and the thanks, guys, because I've been looking this way all night, and I'm like, oh, I'm so happy it's not a straight line again. So I do appreciate the curve, thank you. And the one screen would be great. I mean, I can read most of that, it's just little colored words that I can't. But yeah, I'm good either way.
So let's see a raise of hands for if you're okay if we stay right here. Okay, we don't need to do that. So we're
Yep.
good?
Yep, so
Okay.
we'll move forward with that. Changes you will see that are part of this. So Christian and his team will work on moving the cameras and the setups over here, getting the other screen, and also some removable type blinds in that room and a smaller screen for closed session. Our goal is to have this for the August meeting. This is the busiest time for our tech team, so I will give you well in advance if there's any delay, but we already have the equipment, so we just have to.
And Tiffany,
Sorry, Tiffany, you asked us for our vote. Can we ask you guys what's your preference? Because you guys attend these meetings as often as we do. Is that allowed?
Yes, of course. I would definitely start with Krista and Christian because they all set it up, actually. To Christian.
I'm indifferent if our setup time is sub 30 minutes. So if we can do the retrofits in this room that allow us to set this up in less than 30 minutes, I'm all for it. If we are talking about longer than that, naturally, I want to try to get us in and out of this setup as quickly as possible. For school starts the next day, they may use this. I don't want to overlap with any of that. That's my only concern. So if we're all on board with that, I'm on board.
Christian, how long did this setup take you without the modifications to the facility?
So, because I had to bring in some equipment, if you look back here, it's a little tangled up. Took a little bit longer, anticipating like a plug and play, the stuff that's already in the wall. I could see us getting in sub 30 minutes. I think it took about an hour in the first time last week. So getting it kind of refined and all that, I think we can do that.
Great, thank you for the hard work on that. And then also just clarification too, because it was a significant investment for us to get the hardware for the online capability. You don't, beyond just installation of the existing, you don't foresee a significant cost with the transition?
No, it's basically consumables, so cabling.
Sure.
Is gonna be the biggest cost, and getting into these and seeing what's in there.
Okay.
I'm assuming there's using like open channels in there to get us to, a secure location for the equipment to live in that, authorized faculty can leave when they need to use it. I definitely don't want to say, hey, it's just right here on the desk, any student feel free to walk away with the
Live
microphone.
stream.
But, yeah, I think we can make it work.
Thanks.
Where that's school site will use it as well, under authorized supervision.
Hey, Christian, also verify that once the equipment's set up, we'll be able to move the podium up to where the front row is, so the speakers, it's more personal. We just have it back there because of the temporary, right?
We have it back there, if I put it any closer, about Sierra left, would not be seen by the camera.
Right. So my question is, with the new equipment, we can come back up with it?
Yes, because our vantage point will be higher from where I'm expecting.
Right.
The camera
Okay.
to live at.
Okay with not being seen, just
Right.
That's my luxury.
I prefer being on third base.
Okay, so any other comments? So we'll continue on. And please, Kristen and Tiffany can tell you, the Vanden principal made a great offer when need help bringing down, taking up type stuff too, so don't forget that type thing. So with that said, we'll move on to number 13. I hope everybody has a safe, great summer and has fun. And for the staff, I get it. You guys work hard, you do a lot, but you got to take your vacations too. So Superintendent, please make sure they go have fun, will you? Come back recharged in August. We'll see you all, the first week of August and, well, the special meeting sometime the 1st of August.
And then Monday,
Oh, Monday, we have the, what time is that? Monday, we have a workshop board, to remind you, at right here at 5 o'clock, and you probably won't see an agenda because the agenda's going to be wide open. It's going to be a workshop, so whatever's on your own mind and is important to you, bring it to that workshop. We'll address it. And we've got to really, the moderator, is that the right word? Yeah, the moderator, I met with him. And I kind of told him, my feelings and stuff. And the reason we're not going to do this agenda thing is because if you're in a workshop, in my experience, and I've been to a lot of them, and the members can just bring up things that are important to them, I think the discussion's going to flow really good. So with that said, I guess I'll see you all Monday at 5 o'clock. And we'll do a little different setup, right? Yeah, we'll bring everybody close and we'll have some good discussions. And we won't talk about cell phones, everybody agreed? We'll let that work its way. Okay.